Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this month's Books and Beverages. It's Local History Month this month. We're delighted to welcome Colin Sidaway, who's going to talk about canals. He was born in Rye, a small industrial town on the edge of the Black Country, in 1938, and I have to confess, I've never heard of it. After a grammar school education at King Edward VI Grammar School, Stourbridge, he left school at 16 and took an engineering student apprenticeship. It was in the 1960s that he became interested in industrial archaeology, in particular canals of the West Midlands. I would argue it's not just an interest, I think it's more of a passion, but I'll let
an obsession.
Oh, an obsession, I guess, even better. His interest centred on the canal way of life and having a working boat of his own. How wonderful. Gave him the opportunity of meeting and becoming friends with the boating fraternity, many of whom could neither read nor write. And that's quite something, isn't it? In the 1960s, there were still a lot of people who just didn't have a good education. He was a founder member of the Birmingham Canal Navigation Society with the aim of preserving the Midland canals for future generations. His work brought him to Yorkshire in 1985, a year before I came. More or less as a hobby, he started tutoring day schools for the University of Bradford and evening classes on canals with the WEA. He is now retired and lives in Harrogate, where he writes and publishes stories about working and living on canals, including a short history book with the Bradford Canal. Colin, after that very informal introduction, can I hand over to you?
Thank you very much.
That's it, quiet.
I'm always surprised to see people here to listen to what I'm going to try and say. First and foremost, I'm an engineer, and that comes through everything. Secondly, I was brought up in engineering using imperial units, feet, inches, yards, miles. If you want the conversion to metric, I'll give you the conversion factor so you can work it all out yourself. But I started on canals because what we were doing in the 60s, we were tearing down buildings that had been there for 200 years, modernizing them. And what we put in place didn't last 25 years. The canal system was all built in the Georgian era. So everything you see about the canals is Georgian. We have, at the present time, close on 2,000 miles of inland waterway, which is accessible to everybody from that particular period. And in the 1960s, we were destroying it. And with a few other people, we decided enough was enough. We saw what happened to the railways with beaching. Barbara Castle was going to do the same thing with the canals. The only difference was we were up for doing this. Keighley and Worth Valley Railway were the first possibly to do the railways. And just before we started the Canal Society in 1968. The white paper came out in 1967. What we had was absolutely terrible. I'll show you some pictures later. We had to get the people interested and involved. All they wanted to do at that particular time was use the dump. So my interest came from preservation, if you like, and everything else was strangely different. I started writing books. There are lots of books on canals, and I'll tell you now, I don't know every canal. I've not been down every canal. I don't know where they all are, but this one is in here. This, most canals of the system You've seen this guy on television doing the Bradshaw book on railways. This is the Bradshaw book on canals. It took him any number of years to do. It was published in 1907, and this is a reprint. So, and guess what? There's a Yorkshire Canal which is not in here. Does anybody know where it is? Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's the Emmett Canal. Have you all heard of it? No. At some point, somebody's going to get that. They're going to Google this, and then they're going to tell before the end of the talk where the Emmett Canal is and what's left of it. But this is where it's all at, and this tells you every canal, every mile, every half mile, every furlong of the whole canal system that was working in 1907. So that's the reference I've got. When I came to write my books, you get a lot of these books, lots and lots of them. People like the canals and they want to see pretty pictures. They want to introduce people to weather. I never saw these. All we saw was a still water. What was under the water was anything and everybody's rubbish. And the whole thing was started, this preservation thing, was this little book. It's a reprint. Tom Rolt went on honeymoon. He bought a canal boat, narrowboat, and he went around the canal system in 1939, 38, 39, and he wrote the book in 1946, narrowboat. This again is a reprint, and it sums up the sort of romance of canals, narrow canals, roses and castles, bunch of roses. This is painted by my good friend Tony Lurie. And this book kicks everybody else off for pleasure. He became a founder of the Inland Waterways Association, and for all his life he tried to get people interested in doing this. So that was the original book, 1946. So I came to canals. I wasn't interested in history. They were there. I wanted to save them. Well, I came to Yorkshire, and I started doing these courses for University of Bradford with Colin Speakman. Colin Speakman was railways and roads, and I did the canals. Colin Speakman disappeared to Germany, and I did the roads, canals, and railways. So, so the canal got squashed. So here we are. But I wrote the 3 books. The Bradford Canal was based from. I was requested, in fact, by the university to do a walk on the canal, the Bradford Canal. I thought, it's been closed 20 years. Who's interested? We're interested. Oh, they paid me. So I did the research, and I did the 3-mile walk, and I thought I'd better go and see how it's going. And I was only going to take 12, 15 people. And I said, how many have you got? And he said, 27. I said, 27? I said, I can't talk to 27 people walking down the canal, walking down Canal Road, followed by 20 odd people behind me, and trying to explain what's happening about the canals. Can't do that. He said, but people are still booking up. I said, we'll have to split it and do it twice. And so in 1994, I did 2 walks down the Bradford Canal and took about 50 people. All my notes were left. Somebody published a small leaflet on the Bradford Canal. I thought, there can't be 2 books on Bradford Canal at the same time. So it's on the drawer, on the shelf, forgotten all about it. And then my good friend Malcolm, who was the Yorkshire weaver, he came and he's telling me about dock fields. Nobody knows there's a dock field except the locals, and it was Windhill Junction. And he did this weave from a picture I showed him. I said, oh, he's very interested. So I got my book, all my notes, and I produced a little book. And this is the history book. Tiny little book about Bradford. Only 3 miles long, 10 locks, that's it. And that was the weave. And I used his weave on the front cover. Thanks, I have to thank Malcolm for doing this, because and I've got the use of his weave. This is a wonderful weave. It's done in wool, and somehow it has the, shall we say, what I expect of Yorkshire waterways. It's mills and not so clean, and it's just there, and this is what it was all about. So that was my first book. The other 2 books I wrote was the Canal Boy story, which is an interesting one, because I met people up and down the canal who couldn't read or write. They were not stupid people. These people had a different perspective on life. They could actually look at things, they saw things differently. They didn't read the signpost. They didn't read this, they didn't read that. They looked, they saw everything, and they had a photographic memory. They can remember everything. They can remember all the detail. I can't do it. I've learned to read. I look at the notice, keep out, private. They don't see things like that. They go and help themselves. So I thought there's a story there to be had about people working the canal was supposedly perceived to be stupid. They are far from stupid. And so that was the first story, the Canal Boy story. And the second one I did was the opposite. There's a boy who was some of my background, went to a grammar school, but unlike me, his father owned a factory. Well, if you send in the 1930s, if you send a lad to a grammar school, he would learn Latin and the algebra. When you go into a factory, there's absolutely no use whatsoever. You need to know how to learn to deal with people, work hard, and understand how it works. And so I wrote this other one about the kid off the bank. A boy who was very clever. He went to live with a family on the canal boats who couldn't read or write. It's more, I won't say the same story, but a similar story. And this is how people worked on the canal. It's not what the canal is or where it is or what it does. It is how they lived and how they worked and everyday problems they had. Any number of people can tell you where the canal is. I've shown you 2 already. One's got every canal in the country, and the other one says, explore the canals that are here, they're beautiful. We can do that now, but I had an opportunity of showing people what it was like actually doing that, every day working on the canal. And the very few people can still do that. The generations past, they've gone. So those are my 3 books on the canals. And so let's see what this is, just an aid memoir. Oh, the other thing is, if there's anything you want to know, you need to ask. Now, before at the end of the... So there are the 3 books. A bit of history about canals. The first canal was in fact a Roman canal. It's still in existence. People use it every day. It's from Torksey on the River Trent to it's called the Fosdyke, and it goes down to Lincoln and meets up with the Welland. The next one was in fact Exeter Canal. The Exeter River was in fact silted up, and they built a small, let's say, ship canal. And it was about the 12th, 13th century. So there weren't massive ships that went up there, but they made the ship canal, and that's still open. This is a long way from where the canal system as we know it, and it came to Manchester first. a chap called Francis Egerton, who was the 3rd Duke of Bridgewater, and he had some coal mines just outside Manchester, Worsley. And the problem with mines is they always fill up with water and forever pumping this stuff out. And what he did was he went straight through the hill, out the other side, put a boat on there, loaded the boat up with coal, and he went in out of the mine. Once he got the boat with the coal actually out of the mine, he then extended that out to Manchester. And when he got his coal there, the price dropped. And you have to understand that canals are built for coal. Going back in time, when the canals were done, in the mid-18th century, there's no electricity. Maybe a bit of oil, but not much. There's nothing. There's no gas. We didn't have gas. No electricity, no gas, no sewerage, no water. All these things disappeared. We were in fact an agricultural society living off the land. All the towns were very small. The growing towns had water. The connection was in fact through the rivers, the Severn, the Ouse, the Mersey, Tyne. Well, not much on the Tyne because they sent their coal straight down the coast to London. And coal was the only fuel that we had. And at this time, the mid-18th century, the first steam engine was in fact in Cornwall, pumping out the mines, and that was done by Newcomen. There was a Newcomen engine around. It was last one I saw was in Devonport. The third one he built was in Dudley. We know it's there because we saw the picture, and that is exactly on the site of the Black Country Museum. They built a replica, and every now and again they fire this thing and actually work a traditional, really traditional steam engine. This was a long way from the Industrial Revolution, and what was wanted was in fact the transport system to move things around. Do you know why people use water to transport things? And what we've forgotten is that a man can carry 40 pounds on his back. And if you remember, 1 ton is 240 pounds is equal to 1 ton. 1,000 kilograms, that's right, is equal to 1 ton, with an E. In America, it's 2,000 pounds to 1 ton. They've got their own. So one man can carry this. A horse can carry. Horse can carry a man. 240 pounds. A cart with a horse can go up to 1 ton, which is 10 times that. If you put all this on a boat and float it up with 1 horse, it's all fun. Any idea what the number could be? Well, it's up to 100 tons. In reality, it came to about between 50 and 60 tons. Well, you can see from this where there are no roads, and to get a horse and cart to go over the hills, it's totally impossible. But you get them on. Look at the scale. That's almost hundreds to 1. So the scale became different. Also, at the same time, a man decided a chap called Abraham Darby, clever guy. He actually used coal to smelt iron. It might be not a big deal, but they chopped all the trees down. There are no trees in England left. Lots of coal, but they could not do it. The first person to do it was a chap called Dud Dudley. That's an unusual name, surprise, surprise. Another black country chap, and he was at Himley Hall. You see the ornate pools there. That was part of his foundry. But nobody accepted what he was doing. He died with him. Abraham Darby comes along, and he looks at various things, and he changes the method of making iron from wood, from charcoal, into coke from coal. And that was, and he then moved up to, he found where the coal was, at Coalbrookdale. Abraham Darby III made an iron bridge, they named the town after it. And really that's the cradle of the Industrial Revolution. But they needed up and down the Severn, they had boats, they could move larger volumes. It was up to Francis Edgerton in his little boat to take them into Manchester. And so that's what they did. And here we are, look, this is Worsley. You can still see this place. These are the entrances to the mile. These are the starvationers' boats. I'll talk about boats, different types of boats later. But these were starvationers, and they marveled off. And they had a problem of getting across the river. There's Joe. Yeah, I'll talk about Brindley. Brindley was employed by the Duke to build the canal. He was a semi-literate Derbyshire millwright. He built water mills, big dam, mill race. There's still one in Leek where you can actually go and actually see one of these mills. But as I say, he had all these great ideas, and he did in fact build an aqueduct across the River Irwell. There's a problem going from one side to the other. Irwell was in the middle. They got the lock down across and then lock up again, but there's no water on the other side. And the River Irwell said, "You can't do that. You can't do that." Yes, we can. We can build a bridge across, and this became the wonder of the age. Look, they got mines with water and boats, and all this was in fact the catalyst for the Bradford Canal. Brindley had an idea, great idea. Why don't we join all the rivers together? The Mersey and the Trent, the Severn, the Thames, we all linked them together with canals. Now look, the Cross. They still exist, but he didn't see the end of it. He died before. He actually died before they completed. He got pneumonia doing a survey somewhere. And this little bit here, around the Coventry Canal, it was incomplete. And so the Birmingham Canal people came in and said, "We want this. We're going to have it." And so guess what they did? They built it. And surprise, surprise, the engineer who built it, would you believe, was James Watt. Huh. James Watt. He did a steam engine. Yeah. So suddenly all these engineers are coming together, and the most prolific one, before we get that, so from the Cross, all these canals came out, all over the country, 2,000 miles of them. There's hardly a town in the country that wasn't connected to a river or a canal. So that was his idea. And if you like Yorkshire people, this is our friend Smeaton, Leeds lad. Have you heard of Smeaton? Somebody have, so haven't. He was just the opposite of Brindley. He was well educated, he was a calculator, he was an engineer, he did fantastic things. He drained the fens. He built the first canal over the watershed. Not in England, In Scotland, the Forth and Clyde Canal, and he also built the Colin Canal, and Smeaton was at odds with Brindley. His famous quote, if I can say it, was, "I've heard of castles in the air, but never boats." And it was John Smeaton's apprentice, if you like, who built all the canals. William Jessup. But the way Brindley saw this was build the canals narrow. He's going from one side of the country to the other, and that the way you actually work a canal out is quite simple. If you have a hill, and that's the level of the canal you want, what you do is you dig that part out, you dig this part out, and you build it up here. So there's your level of your canal, and this is the towpath. You can't take it anywhere because you've got no transport system. You're building the transport system. And the objective of taking a boat down a canal is you have to push the water, or push the boat through the water, and the water builds up in the front. And so the objective of the exercise is to get the water from the front of the boat to the back of the boat. And if I can actually try and work it out, if you have the canal, the boat, there's your boat. This area here has to be 4 times the cross section of the boat. Doesn't matter how long it is, it could be half a mile long, but it's all to get how do you get the water around. And so that if you're building a canal across country, you can't afford to spend a lot of time digging. So the idea was that the canal would be 7 foot wide and 3 feet deep. And so that's 3 times 7 is 21, times 4 is equal to 84 plus 1, which is 105. So 105, that's all you have to do is 105 square feet. Our friend with his keels, his boat was 14 feet by 6 feet. When you work that out, it's 6 times 14, which is 84, times 5, comes out to 210, I think. Twice as big, twice as much. When you come to the Bradford Canal, the dimensions are different. The guy who organised that, he was halfway between Brindley and Smeaton, and his boat was 14 feet wide, but only 3 feet deep, whereas this was 6 feet deep. So he's halfway between. Brindley's boat was 70 feet long, the keels were 60 feet long, and our friend Longbottom decided he's going to have that length of boat times 14, and about 4 foot deep. And that's how they came as a compromise for the Leeds and Liverpool Canal. It was a compromise. So here's your keel. What does that look like? Any idea? Was that half Viking? It is Viking. They weren't all sort of charging around in. This is a variation of Viking boat, which carried cargo. And in Yorkshire, particularly East Yorkshire, they have a different name for things. They don't have locks, they have pens. And the whole emphasis of boating is different in Yorkshire. So I came to the Bradford Canal. A chap called Walter Stanhope, who lived in Eccleshill, he went over to see the Worsley. Oh, look at all these canals. Oh, that's all fantastic. Why don't we get the Bradford Canal into Leeds? Why don't we get the Bradford Canal, the coal, actually into Liverpool? Good idea. And so they decided they're going to do this. And unfortunately, the directors of the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, they forgot to put Bradford in. Their idea was to take the canal across the country, and we'll have a branch to Bradford, Bradford Skipton, Bradford Keighley, and we'll have little branch canals off the main. So they decided to go for the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, and then they thought of the Bradford Canal later. And so the opening of the canal was split in half, really. The Lancashire side didn't speak to the Yorkshire side, and the Wigan Canal coal people didn't want the Bradford Canal coal people. So Wigan took Liverpool and Bradford took Leeds. And so they opened this little canal from Windhill Junction down to Spinkwell Locks. A place called Hoppy Bridge. Can we show you Hoppy Bridge? Yeah, there's Hoppy Bridge. They diverted the becks in Bradford into the canal, and this was right up into the city centre. Look, there's a cathedral. If you go into the cathedral, you actually find all memorial to the people who actually built the canal. And it went up into here in what everybody calls Dock Fields locally. And the little bridge, the canals from Skipton coming down up to Leeds, and in that direction was in fact Bradford. And the first boat that came down, horse over it down, and off we go. And it was in fact coal coming in from being shipped from Bradford to Leeds and Skipton. And from Skipton they took lime. And I couldn't run somewhere. Why lime? What's interesting in lime? What's good about lime? Well, they used to have whitewash and plaster and sort of lime mortar. I didn't realise at the time that every ton of iron you make, you need 1 ton of lime. So they had the coal, they had iron at Lowmore, and just up the road they had, would you believe, lime. And so two-way traffic became very, very good. And look at the scale. It went from just a wagon load up into 100-ton load. This is the making really of the Industrial Revolution. When the Bradford Canal came, there was no such thing as money. You know, there's no paper money. There are no banks. The people who built the canal, the boatyard at Dockfields, they formed the first bank. How they managed to get all the money together, who held the money, I have no idea when they built the thing. But they started a banking system, and so Bradford became an international banking system. So once you got stone, build materials, you got fuel, coal. All they then needed was they could build steam engines. They went from water power to steam power, and the whole thing took off. And within the space of 100 years, Bradford grew from a very small town, a dell town, that had fields and sheep actually grazing in the city centre, or in the city centre now, to probably the richest city in Yorkshire, if not the country. So where did it all go wrong? Well, these are the people. They're all Yorkshire people, look. There's no foreigners there. The people who actually paid for the canal and built the canal were all from Yorkshire. This idea of bands of navvies going up and down the countryside causing havoc. Never happened here. Never happened. They were just locals. This is what happened to Bradford. They diverted the beck into the canal. There was no sewage system. And all the sewage from houses and waste from factories all end up in the beck. Well, as long as the beck's going down, the particles will be held in suspension. There's no problem. It's when there's no movement of things, it all settles down. And when you consider all the waste from the houses and the factories, the canal became a stinking ditch. They thought it was a health hazard. So they closed the canal 2 or 3 times, and eventually they closed it for 5 or 6 years in the mid-19th century because they stopped the water supply from the becks. They built steam engines, steam boilers, steam pumps to pump the water back up to the top again. When they wore out, they couldn't replace them. No money. Supply. And so this is what happened. Derelict. Just what I find interesting about this is these walls were dry stone walls. If you go to Bingley Five Wires, you see they're all nicely there, all nicely cemented in, and no, they were not. That's somebody else doing that. These guys did actually traditional stonework on the canlocks. And as you walk down Dock Lane, you can see this is the old engine house, and this is the Lock Cottage. Surprise, surprise, they're still there. There's the Lock Cottage, look. No little house. And all the people, I'll say most of the people, who actually were connected with the canal have memorial tablets in the cathedral. And this is one of them. This is a chap called Joseph Priestley. It's a lovely memorial to him. And on the bottom you see, there's the canal, look. Started digging it out, one end, and there's a boat sailing into the tunnel at the other. And that's what I'm talking about. That's the difference of scale. And that, would you believe, is the bottom lock. The Lock Cottage you just seen is this one here. Things do change, don't they? We all know where this is. This is the Five Rise. And when I was over at the Five Rise last year, which is the reopening of the canal, celebration of the reopening of the canal, I gave one little book of this little canal book to Sharon Bright. That was a big mistake. She works for the Canal and River Trust. What she went and did, she actually read the book. That's what always surprised me. And she said, "Oh, there's a walk in here. Look." I got some pictures as well. And she actually did the walk. She said, "Your walk is still there." I said, "But there's nothing to see." She said, "Well, still do the walk." And she said, "Oh no, there's some more." And so she organised 6 walks this year. Organised the 6. She was booked up until October. And she had to put 3 more in. What do I know? So, but you have to register. I didn't register anymore. My people just came, and I just hope for the best. Because of insurance purposes and things, they have to register a fixed number. So if you want to go on this walk, and I'll recommend it to you, it's the ideal walk for canals. Not much water, and the good walking everywhere. And you can see all the artifacts that were along they're long since gone. And they're still there. The houses are there, the bridges are there. It's all there. It's just that my friend Malcolm today just told me that somebody's decided to reopen the canal. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. But there we go. Which one?
Is there a date when it opens?
9 miles. I would think probably about £20 million in the 10 years. If you're wondering about where that money came from, one of the things I actually did in 1976 was start digging out the Rochdale Canal. Nobody knew what the hell to do, and I explained to everybody what needed to be done. So for the first 3 months, all I ever did was work on the Rochdale Canal, telling people how to dig them thing out, do this, do that, do that, do that. It went up to from 48 people up to 460 people. £20 million, and 30 years later, it was reopened. So 3 miles, it's got to be at least £10 million in 10, 15 years. The canal boy story, I've already explained, was about a boy who couldn't read or write. And it's a nice story. And this is my friend Bunny Bumford. This was his way of having a holiday on the canal. He had a mule. There's his wife. His kids are tied on. And there's his 2 lurchers. And he goes down the canal. Sadly, no longer. He was a fantastic painter. He was a dock painter in the Midlands. And he lived in one of these little, the back cabin was in fact like a Romany. The lace plates with ribbons, all the brass, highly polished. That's the bed round the corner. And this table, I'm going to show you his table. There's his table. That's one of Bunny's. And it came onto the dock to be repaired, and that's the boat being repaired, and that was the table. I thought I've got to take a picture of Bunny's table. And the boat came back to Gifford, came back to the yard, and here's all brightly painted, all really docked up. And I've got Len Wilson and old boatman in the hatches. And we wanted a picture of a horse. So we got the local rag and bone man, Bill Woolley, and he's I don't know if it's a horse or a pony. I got told up because I can't tell the difference. But there's his horse, Bill, and Bill's looking around wondering, what the hell's going on here? Where's the cart? He hasn't got a cart, he's got a boat. And if you think it's all nice and easy down the canal, you can forget it. They walk 12, 16, 18 hours a day through all the seasons. Nice walking, absolutely. This is Keggy. Mud, ice, droppings. You can't go around. You can't walk around it. You just got to go through it. And this is the top of Braids, in the middle of Black Country, and the boat's in the lock, as you see, the line's coming on. And he was the last working boatman in the more stories about Keggy you can make, well, I'm not going to tell any of them. They all tend to be a bit sort of suspect. But the idea was to move in coal, and this is a coal wharf, and this is the way I actually load the boats. Little trucks come down, dump it up into the boat, and off we go. Now that is not a narrowboat. That's the narrowboat. This is not a narrowboat. The difference is this is what they call an Anton boat. It only worked on the Wolverhampton level. It didn't have to go through the locks, so it could be built bigger, and it was. Over 80 feet long and over 8 feet wide. Extra load. So it's quite an interesting, say, book. You can see the one that's quite narrow compared with this one, and it's they were quite. The number of people went aboard another boat and got one of these and found they couldn't take it anywhere. It became a joke. And my story about this boy having a bit like Tom Sawyer. He had his little adventures, and then he's called up into the army. He's tricked into signing on, and he goes in the army to be a cook in Wuppertal. And 5 years later, comes back and he finds his boat sunken. No trade on the canal. His parents were off the bank, and they live in a little house. His boat at Rickmansworth, tied up on the outside, half sunk. Now this is Rickmansworth, and that's what it used to be like. Grand Union Canal, wide locks. There's another boat, and they're just tied up on the outside. And he came back, and he finds his parents. He goes to the boat, he pumps them out, and he's got somewhere to live. And so the story is that he grows up on the canal. He doesn't want to read or write, couldn't be bothered going to school. What do you need to learn to walk around a horse with a boat? You don't need to read anything. You want to be a number one. He wanted his boat to be like that, all polished. He wanted to be a number one. He wanted to have the best canal, best boat on the canal. So that's where he went. And he started at Rickmansworth. There's always mistakes in my book. A good one here. I said he got on his bike from City Road down to Euston, and he catches the local train from Euston to Rickmansworth. My friend wrote for me and said, "You couldn't do that." Why not? I said, "They stopped that service in 1952. So when you think you've done all the research, you've done absolutely everything, there's always somebody you haven't got. And with railways, there's always somebody who knows somebody you don't know. So there we are. And the kid off the bank was just the opposite. A kid who went to grammar school. I went to grammar school and all about that. We did Latin, algebra. But his father had a factory, and I chose Walsall, not Warsaw, but Walsall. Walsall is a little town in the middle of the back country, renowned for leather goods. And had a leather factory. But he wanted his son to go into the business. His son couldn't go into the business. What good is Latin to work in black country workman? So he decided that he was going to go down to I don't know why I put this one in. A journey of discovery. That's about it. He went down to Public Wharf and he found a pair of working boats. And he signed his son up to become an apprentice. And it shows the year 1935. No other reason, just a year. And it goes off to the 5 years, comes to 1939, he enlists, he goes in the army. Now I can't write war books. I'm not a pacifist. We have to do our duty for king and country at the time. And I'm all for that. But, there's a big but. He went off and he came back. The South Staffordshire Regiment is not the best place to go. They were infantry. They were sent off to Belgium. They were at Dunkirk. I've never heard anybody tell me that the Germans took prisoners from Dunkirk. I think the South people just used every bullet they got, and when the Germans gave them, well, they didn't take any prisoners, put it that way. And so my little hero, his best friend says, "Go on the boat, get off. I'll see you in the pub Saturday night." He goes off. He can't see his friend again. But when he gets back, he takes his son on a walk down memory lane, and this is what he could see. So, how do you tell a story about nothing? So, what's he looking at? So he has a 10-year-old son, and his 10-year-old son says, "Dad, what are you looking at?" So the father tells the son the story of his canal exploits. So he walks down the canal, and he remembers different things for different times. So his memory is not sequential, which if you remember Forrest Gump, he's on the bench, and everything is sequential. Mine isn't sequential. He's walking. The only thing sequential about is walking down the canal, and there's not much left of the canal. You can see, the canal's there. All the boats have gone. Everything's gone. And he walks down the locks. Now, this is about the only picture I've got of walks the locks. Black country. And this is the public wharf at Warsaw. It's not like that now. This is the town centre here, and then they've got a museum and pubs and things, and they've actually made it into somewhere people go. Nobody ever goes there, of course, but there should anybody want to go. But as you can see, it's pretty run down, and this is the sort of place I was getting to. And this is the pair of boats that he was working on. That's what he was going on to. So the chalk and cheese. And there we go. So I'll try to show you that the people working the canal had a desperate life. It was a desperate life. We're fortunate that they're still all with us. I was going to show you a picture of what we're doing. And I might have a few more on here. Let's all look. Yeah, this is what we're up against. This was in the early 60s. That's what happened to it. And this was the canal. Look at the kids. If they fell in there, would you go in and jump in and get them out? And here they are, look. You just can't keep kids away from water. And these were Cane Hill locks in 1984. And look at them now. Look at the number of people on the towpath. We've got a tremendous heritage here. We need to use it all the time. Get more people on the bank. Unfortunately, the Canal and River Trust have been given a poison chalice. They've got more canals now than they've ever had. The Rochdale open, Huddersfield's open. They're all reopening all the canals. They've got more people, they've got more things to look after. And Cameron took away British Waterways, he went to a trust, and now the Labour people have got in and they've taken all the funding away. So who do you trust? You don't rely on central government to do anything. What you do is you appeal to the general public, say we can do this. This is worth keeping. And that's what That's what they're doing, and Sharon is doing a good job. If you want to go on any of the walks, find out Sharon Bright at Colin Road Trust and book yourself onto one of the walks and get involved. It's been a lifetime experience for me, and unfortunately, I'm still here, and I'm still getting different experiences. Well, thank you very much for listening. You're very, very quiet. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh.
See.
I am aware of the Canal River Trust. Still meeting to fibre locks.
Yep.
And if you want information on progress and improvements to the canal, it'd be a good place to go.
I don't know progress on a day-to-day basis, but if you go on, if you ever get internet access, you go on the Canal River Trust. They publish things all the time about what's happening and where it's going, and they've got the different, actually say, areas sorted out. KNL is in devices, so that they do cover the country, and they're also in Scotland as well, surprisingly. Yeah, but Sharon Bright got 2 R's in the name. Which is, that's the only thing she ever told me. You've got 2 R's in Sharon. So look them up and.
The people who live on the canal
Oh yes.
pay the fee to the running of the canals.
That's right. There's more people now on the canal than there's ever been, and there's about, I think last time I heard, about 15,000 boats with people living on them. But you get a canal boat now, you can't find a way to keep it. All the moorings are taken. So it's just turned out, and I say the Canals and River Trust have been given a Persian chalice really. They can't get any more people on the canal because they've got nowhere to put them. They put the prices up, and they have to try and live off whatever they can by organising events and my books. Bradford Canal is actually in the Bradford Cathedral. It's also at the underground market where Malcolm got a display of his pictures, and it's also at Haworth on the railway. So they are around and about.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Very, very important.